Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at an updated Pokemon in the Master League that is soaring back to meta relevance, and that is Sucker Punch on Yveltal. Yveltal, many seasons back, was a top meta pick in the Open Master League, but over time, it honestly got power crept out of the meta. Sucker Punch, with the massive buff that it got, it now has the same stats as Counter did in previous seasons, sends Aveltal back to Master League meta status, running the moveset of Sucker Punch, Dark Pulse, and Legacy Oblivion Wing. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at Sucker Punch Aveltal in the Master League. Hopping to the first match, picking up a positive lead, Aveltal versus Tapu Bulu. Tapu Bulu has a pacing advantage, but Aveltal wins all even shields if it's running Oblivion Wing. And because of that, Bulu players love to go for a debuff and dip. They bring in their Rhyperior. I'm going to farm up just shy of 100 energy and bring in my own. Whether it's the Breaking Swipe or the harder hitting Rock Wrecker, I can absorb whatever they throw. They're going to go for Breaking Swipe after Breaking Swipe, fishing for that 50% chance at an attack drop. 2 Breaking Swipes and no debuff, so a bit of bad luck there for my opponent. I'm going to fire off my own Breaking Swipe. I do get the debuff, and that means instead of this being a simultaneous KO, I actually survive on 1 HP. I'm just shy of the Rock Wrecker. Rock Wrecker does a ton of damage. Opponent respects it, and that's honestly going to be a move that probably gets shielded on day 1 of Masters, but going forward is not going to be shielded just because people will have a better understanding of the counts once they get more familiar with it. In this instance, they have a Palkia, and I have a Duskmane endgame, so I'm just in a winning position. I land the Sunsteel Strike, which is terrific. I thought about just no shielding and just trying to Sucker Punch down with Yveltal, but I remembered that I had 2 moves loaded, so it honestly felt a little bit wasteful because I'd have to go so far over 100. I can just switch back into Yveltal, and I have the back-to-back Oblivion Wings. Oblivion Wing number 1 gets the shield. Opponent is going to fire off their energy, but I can shield, and that is the awkward thing about being Tapu Bulu in this matchup, is Bulu can't really ever Bullet Seed down. So I can commit the shield, go for another Oblivion Wing, down goes Tapu Bulu, and we take the win. Dominant lead in the next match, Aveltal versus Duskmane. Opponent is going to switch out into Rhyperior. Rhyperior farming up quite a bit. I stay in this matchup. I want to try and get some damage with a Dark Pulse before I look to switch out. So I'm going to throw 1 switch into my own Rhyperior and hopefully catch the Rock Wrecker. Opponent did go for the Breaking Swipe bait. They do get the debuff, but honestly, that's very okay by me. I'm still going to get some nice value out of the Rhyperior if it's going up against the Duskmane. They actually decide to bring in their third, which will be a Waterfall Primarina. Even a debuff Rock Wrecker does a lot of damage to Primarina. Primarina's stats just really do not compare favorably when it comes to something like a Rhyperior. I can bring in Duskmane. Waterfall Primarina does mean they have better play against Duskmane, but it means they're substantially worse against Yveltal. Hydro Cannon is going to connect. I can now bring in Yveltal, shield everything, and just look to massively overfarm. As long as my opponent doesn't catch an Oblivion Wing, which as long as I'm careful, they just can never do. So I just throw on 1, 4, 7, or 10, and make sure that I see the waterfall animation so that they're not waiting turns. And I'm just in a completely winning position. So I will commit the shield. They're going to fire off another Hydro Cannon, and I just have to watch for the switch out. There's the switch out. Look at the Sucker Punches go. This thing is absolutely cracked this season. Dark Pulse picks up the KO. In comes Waterfall Primarina, and Aveltal, even against a Fairy type, putting in so much work, knocking out the Primarina and taking the win. We move to the next match, Aveltal versus Aveltal. We have a mirror, and as soon as I saw their combat power, I knew I was in trouble. The reason being is they're running Best Buddy boost on their Yveltal, which means, since I'm not, I will always lose charge attack priority. And that's a problem because my backline has no fast move pressure into Yveltal. So I'm going to fire off Oblivion Wing. It doesn't knock out here. A Focus Blast would though, so my opponent respects the potential Focus Blast. I lose charge attack priority, and now I'm in a pretty difficult spot. I decided to let it go. Opponent smartly went for a Dark Pulse there because either move KOs, and a Dark Pulse covers for me potentially trying to catch on something that resists flying. I bring in Rhyperior. I'm going to shield up the Dark Pulse, just look to overfarm as much as I can, and go for the Rock Wrecker to pick up the knockout. So at the very least, I got Aveltal out of the way. I have to hope that now Duskmane can do well in the back, but there's a Landorus. Oh no, this is so bad. This is so bad. I land the Rock Wrecker, but it does not do a lot, and my opponent is going to do a great job of over farming. And realistically, whether I shield or not, this game's over. I don't have a way to win this game. I'm going to bring in the Duskmane. Opponent is now going to send out Rhyperior. So they are running a double ground strategy in the back. And there's just not a whole lot that I can do here, to be honest. And from here, I know I can't win the game, so I'm just not going to shield anymore. They're going to land the Rock Wrecker, and from there, I will resign the match. We move to the next match, leading Yveltal into, you guessed it, another Rhyperior. Rhyperior is just going to be absolutely everywhere this season, and honestly, I don't mind it purely just based off the fact that it's a very easy Pokemon to obtain. You don't have to do a single raid to get a level 50 Rhyperior, which is a very nice change compared to the typical legendary heavy meta. Here, my opponent is going to go for a cap tie on a potential breaking swipe. I didn't throw my move. I just decided to let it go, and I'm just going to go for farm on Duskmane. Duskmane is going to have to absorb multiple Aqua Tails here. I'm probably going to have to tank one and then shield the second. Opponent goes for a Spatial Rent. They're thinking they can get a Spatial plus an Aqua Tail. It's going to be close, but they just don't get there. And now I have so much energy on this Duskmane. Opponent is going to bring out Ho-Oh, and that's not what I was hoping to see. Oh no. I'm going to throw the Dark Pulse. It's going to land, throw one Shadow Claw, defer it onto Aveltal. Quick switch by the opponent as they bring in Rhyperior. I commit the shield. It's the Rock Wrecker. That would do so much damage, and I'm going to fire off the Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse is going to connect. Rhyperior does not get the move. I get the farm down. The game's stuttering like crazy, but we're still trying to hold on and play our best. I miss a bubble there, but at this point, they kind of have to shield everything. So the missed bubble, thankfully, doesn't end up costing me. I have to shield the Sacred Fire. Whether they get a debuff or not, I should be in a pretty okay spot. They do get the debuff because of the Sucker Punch damage. Previously, Snarl had fast energy generation, but it did almost no damage. And now, look at the farm ability, even when debuffed by Yveltal. Ho-Oh can never hold 2 charge attacks, so I just stay in, force them to Sacred Fire, and I get to the Sunsteel Strike. So things got really scary there with the Ho-Oh in the back, but we are still able to take that win. Aveltal versus Dialga in the next match. Aveltal does win the 2s straight Dark Pulse now that it has this new upgraded Sucker Punch, but I do want to switch out and check for a potential ground type, and I'm able to bait it out as in comes Rhyperior. Rhyperior is going to fire off a Breaking Swipe of their own. We're now both debuffed. And here, I should have thrown it sooner. It wouldn't have KO'd if I threw it sooner, so that's why I overfarmed. But I end up losing charge attack priority there, which is a little bit unfortunate, as now it's going to probably set up the Dialga to get some farm. They actually survived that as well. I think I'm only going to get 1 Mud Slap on the Dialga. And for Dialga, taking a debuff Mud Slap, honestly not a bad trade to get an energy advantage. I'm going to bring in Duskmane. I know Duskmane can tank whatever they throw. In case it is a double ground line, I have to keep 2 shields for Yveltal. So I'm going to absorb this energy here, look to farm up a lot, go for a Sunsteel. After I throw this energy, I'm expecting they're going to switch. So I'm going to bring in my own Yveltal, and it's a simultaneous switch, but it looks like I'm slightly ahead in terms of energy, so maybe I clicked it before my opponent, but either way, I am going to fire off the Oblivion Wing here. And now, my opponent is going to be Oblivion Winging as well. This is going to be a very difficult endgame to play out of, because by the time we both make it to our 3rd Oblivion Wing, the switch timer will be available. I do end up losing the coin flip on that charge attack priority tie, but since I should be 1 Sucker Punch ahead, I can just farm up to the Oblivion Wing and then just wait the turn to make sure that I see the Sucker Punch go through. So I wait the turn, I see the Sucker Punch go through, I can fire off the Oblivion Wing. Oblivion Wing is going to deliver the knockout. In comes Dialga, and look at those Sucker Punches go. Yveltal is so cool this season. We move to the next match, Yveltal versus Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh, a Pokemon that I definitely have to stay in, and I get 2 frame drops before I even make a move. Oh my goodness, during their 2nd Incinerate and during their 3rd Incinerate, I got frame drops. The state of this game on Android is just atrocious right now. I don't know how it's not being worked on, because it's very, very frustrating to play. They save switch into Zygarde. Unless they're running Outrage, Zygarde's moveset is going to be walled by Yveltal. Even so, a Hundo Zygarde can actually beat Yveltal in all evens, just because of the massive difference in stat product. Here, I don't get Crunch debuff, which is very nice. I'm going to fire off the Oblivion Wing and pick up the knockout. In comes Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh is going to get a big farm down, but I have the switch advantage that I need. I can put Rhyperior on this. In the back is Palkia. I'm going to fire off a super effective Breaking Swipe. I don't need a debuff. A debuff would be nice, though. It turns out I do actually get the debuff, and getting that debuff should basically just lock up this game as a victory, because now these Aqua Tails are just going to be doing less than nothing. Look at that damage. Duskmane completely unfazed, Aqua Tail after Aqua Tail. Duskmane's still going to be very, very healthy after that lands. Not even in the red yet. Going to farm up to 100 and full send the Sunsteel Strike. Even though it is resisted, it does do more damage. Opponent commits the shield. They are going to switch into the Ho-Oh, but I get another Sunsteel Strike. Duskmane is going to pick up that knockout. In comes Rhyperior. It's a race, and I get the Breaking Swipe before they get to double up on Aqua Tails there. The Breaking Swipe knocks out Palkia, and that is a good game. Yveltal versus Rhyperior. Again, we have a pacing disadvantage, so we're going to try and catch. I don't get the catch. Opponent is going to farm up to the back-to-back Breaking Swipes, and they're going to throw their energy. Them throwing their energy here is great. They're going to full send a Rock Wrecker, and now they're going to bring out Palkia, and I'm going to go for a Rock Wrecker of my own. We've seen that Breaking Swipe is super effective, of course, but Rock Wrecker does way more damage. Rock Wrecker is a Rock-type clone of the move Blast Burn. So even though Breaking Swipe is super effective and Rock Wrecker is only neutral, Rock Wrecker is the better move to go for in a lot of situations. So that's going to set up a really nice Sucker Punch farm down, and Yveltal up energy is just absurdly difficult to get rid of this season. I'm going to be able to fire off the Oblivion Wing, and look what happens to this poor Xerneas. Look at the Sucker Punches. They're resisted, and this thing's getting farmed down. Opponent makes a sick catch onto the Rhyperior, but unfortunately for them, it's not going to save them, as Aveltal is going to farm up the switch into the Duskmane as Rhyperior makes it to the charge attack. It is going to be the Breaking Swipe. I get the farm down with the Duskmane. They have 2 shields on this Xerneas, but the only way they can damage the Duskmane is by going for a close combat, so I just never shield. Because if they go for the close combat, then I can just fully farm them down, and I'm in a very good spot. At this point, my opponent will know that it's over, so just to speed up the process a little bit, I throw the Dark Pulse, they let it go, and the game ends with not a single shield used. Amazing lead in the next match. Yveltal leading into the Duskmane. Opponent is going to save switch into Kyurem, and I get to bank so much energy on Yveltal before I bring out the wall to Kyurem. That is Duskmane. Very unfortunate turn of events here for my opponent, but odds are they're probably trying to bait out a steal like a Duskmane in order for their final Pokemon to sweep. I am double debuffed, but this is still a Sunsteel Strike. Sunsteel Strike is going to connect, picking up that knockout. Opponent is going to bring back in their Duskmane. They're going to get hit with a -2 Dark Pulse. Dark Pulse at -2, still going to do quite a bit of damage. I'm now going to bring in Rhyperior. I think that aggressively pivoting Rhyperior is a very safe play. I have to go down a shield, but I'm expecting it's a dragon in the back, and if it is, I want to apply debuffs, and it turns out that it's Palkia. And up energy, this is so fine for Rhyperior. Rhyperior, even energy, straight up wins the 2s versus Palkia every single time, and if you run the Shadow Rhyperior, you actually win the 1s and the 2s, as long as you're at perfectly even energy to start the matchup. So Rhyperior is extremely, extremely deadly. I land the Breaking Swipe. I get another Breaking Swipe. And from here, Aveltal's just going to be able to close out the game for me. They're going to shield. I switch out into Aveltal. I get the farm down. And now it is Oblivion Wing time. Poor Palkia. Got heavily debuffed. Had to switch out to try and reset the debuffs. But Oblivion Wing will secure the KO and take the win. We move to the next match, Aveltal versus Zacian. Bit of a tricky lead. Most Zacians are on Snarl, but this Zacian is on Quick Attack. I'm expecting they're going to farm up 2 double Wild Charges and throw, so I'm going to farm up, switch, and catch. It's either going to be a Play Rough or a Wild Charge. Please tell me it's the Wild Charge, and it is. We catch the Wild Charge. Opponent going to bring out their own Aveltal, and this is a really good Pokemon to bait out. So what I should do is just let Rhyperior go, KO them with a bunch of Oblivion Wings, and try and sweep with Duskmane. However, you're going to see how not to play this team in this game. I should never shield this, but I shield it. My thought is I can force the shield with the Rock Wrecker and then combo with an Oblivion Wing. Oblivion Wing does a lot of damage to them, but what it does not do is KO, and that's a problem, because Aveltal into Duskmane is absolutely terrible, and now they're still going to have like a 30% health Aveltal remaining. So a really, really bad turn of events for me, as they have a Dialga in the back. If I just let the Rhyperior go, used my Yveltal to KO theirs, then I could have swept this game with Duskmane. but instead I have brutally misplayed this. Today, I'll be honest, throughout the frame drops, it kind of got me playing while frustrated, and playing while frustrated, oftentimes you don't make the best plays ever. So here I try and farm up a lot of energy, thinking that surely a Dark Pulse will be able to KO Aveltal because I have to get rid of this Pokemon before it puts me in Wild Charge range, but this is Aveltal. It has incredible stats. That is not nearly Dark Pulse range. So unfortunately, a very winnable game for the team is going to end in a loss just due to absolutely brutal mismanagement of the team. So this is a really good example of how, even though technically I was in a bit of a tough spot, this game I should win every single time if I play better, but instead I didn't trust the ABB style strategy, and Yveltal for my opponent was just way too good in the end game. Speaking of things that are very good this time for me, opponent, oh no, they lead Duskmane into Aveltal, they save switch Hisui Avalugg, and they get met with Duskmane. Everything going wrong for this opponent in this final match. I'm going to throw 6 Shadow Claws, go for the Sunsteel Strike to pick up a very comfortable knockout here. So Sunsteel will pick up the KO. My opponent is going to bring in their own Necrozma. We are both best buddies, so I played the cap tie, and I end up losing the coin flip there. A little bit unfortunate, Dark Pulse will KO, but I can bring back in Aveltal. They have Palkia in the back, and here I should have switched instantly into Rhyperior. Staying in here, desyncing the timers is a mistake. I should still win regardless, but desyncing the timers is just an error on my part, because even if you're behind by 1 or 2 turns, that's fine, because Rhyperior has 4-3 pacing, whereas, so it's 12 turns and then 9, whereas Palkia is consistently 12-12 for a while, and then it eventually gets to 11. So I will go for the Breaking Swipe. Their switch clock's still not up. After this, they are able to switch. They're going to bring in Necrozma. That's very okay. Opponent fires off a Dark Pulse, and I know that I can survive this, so I'm very okay with this. But they're running Iron Head. It KOs. I'm suddenly a little bit worried, but it's all going to work out in the end because Yveltal just completely destroys every Duskmane it sees, farms down, opponent sees the writing on the wall, and concedes the match. All in all, Yveltal ascends back to its top meta status that it once held. Sucker Punch gives it an incredible ability to farm things down, even when Sucker Punch is resisted, like against fairies. Like we saw, Sucker Punch was even adding up on stuff like Zacian and the Xerneas that we saw. So if you do have Yveltal, in my view, this is the meta for it. It is extremely strong. There are definitely things that you have to watch out for, but it feels like a Pokemon that its energy can be exceedingly flexible, and you can use it with very careful energy management to escape some pretty scary situations. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated, so thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.